to Robert Mueller. Michael Zeldin and Maggie Haberman of the New York Times. There's a lot to talk about, and let's take it slowly and methodically and go through it because of the importance. I want to start with this. You heard as part of his statement, General Flynn says he's cooperating with the special counsel. As part of its statement to the judge, the special counsel says these conversations that Flynn had with the Russians, he says, came at the direction of senior transition officials, unnamed in court, and that they were reported back to senior transition officials around the President of the United States, the President-elect at that point. Now, we don't have the names to those. Ty Cobb, the President's lawyer, says this, Maggie, nothing about the guilty plea or the charge implicates anyone other than Mr. Flynn. What the special counsel said in court calls that into pretty serious question.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is that is a political statement. That statement from Ty Cobb, that is a statement aimed at making Donald Trump happy and essentially keeping, you know, the mummies of legal prosecution at bay. But at the end of the day, it has no bearing on what Flynn might actually be telling the special counsel's office. Number one. Number two, the rest of that statement was that Flynn was an Obama administration official. That is actually the most disingenuous and silly part of this statement. This is a person, yes, he was an Obama administration official, and then he was somebody, and then he was fired, and then he was somebody who the Obama administration warned Trump about. He was somebody who the current president of the United States, floated personally to a newspaper reporter as a possible running mate when he was doing the reality show pick of potential VPs. This is well after he had been fired. This is somebody who was chanting "lock her up" so long at the convention that I think the cameras had to eventually stop, or they had to usher him off stage. And this is somebody who Chris Christie and Jeff Sessions, when they were involved in the transition process before this president was elected, before Election Day, had warned of having Flynn in a consequential position like National Security Advisor. They had said that he should be at ODNI. Basically, that would be where it was. Flynn considered that beneath him. Right after Christie was fired, when Jared Kushner and other members of the Trump family essentially de facto took over the transition, they basically gave Flynn his pick of what he wanted, and this is what he chose. So Trump's routine, as we have seen repeatedly with people who get in trouble, Paul Manafort, you know, you name it, on and on, people he disavowed, Steve Bannon, I barely know the guy. Like the I barely know the guy strategy is not going to work here.
Not going to work here. This is a right-hand man to a degree on many of these issues. Michael, I want to bring you in here because you know how this works and you know Bob Mueller. We know that General Flynn was under investigation. We know you could make a case that he did not properly disclose, for example, some of his foreign lobbying. You could have charged him with that if you wanted to. If you wanted one placeholder charge, you could have done that and secured his cooperation. What is the significance that Bob Mueller, at a time when a lot of people are saying, what are you up to? Is this worth the money? Is this worth the time? Is this worth the cloud over a president? Charges with Russia, ambassador, and says in court, reported back to the rest of the transition.
Right. The four lies that he picked tell you something very important, which is that this is an ongoing investigation that implicates a lot of people in the Trump inner circle. Because he could have, as you said, picked the SF-86, failure to disclose financial contacts, and be done with this. But he picked four lies in one indictment, so in one information. He could have made four counts, and it had been 20 years. But he picked one, which means that there is substantial cooperation going on here. You just don't, you know, if you will,
he's giving Michael Flynn a pretty easy deal here.
If you don't take something which is 20 years and make it 5 for nothing. So it is important that he picked the UN and he picked sanctions, because the June 9th meeting with Donald Trump Jr. is all about sanctions. And at that, you've got Kushner, Manafort, Don Trump Jr. The UN is about Kushner and Israel and Egypt and that UN resolution that was not vetoed. So he's telling these people this is important stuff. Also, I think what's important here is that these lies took place, these conversations took place during the transition. The lie took place 4 days after. Mueller's not appointed until 5 months later. So the FBI has got its counterintelligence investigation going on. And I don't know that these guys are even thinking about what Mueller may be thinking, because Mueller's not there. So they may be more inclined to lie. Remember, one of the lies here says, Flynn said, I don't remember. That's a lie. Jeff Sessions said, I don't remember 100 times in 3 days of testimony. So this portends a lot of bad news, I think. No matter what Ty Cobb says, this portends a lot of bad news for a lot of people for a lot of reasons.
And on that note, just talking to people in Trump world this morning about this, the thing that I hear most, that they're most concerned about, is really basic. They are concerned that the now president of the United States, the then candidate, specifically asked Michael Flynn to make contact with the Russians, that is possible. We don't know. But Michael Flynn knows, and he's going to have to tell the prosecution if that's true.
Right, and so the question, who are those senior transition officials in Mar-a-Lago? Specifically said in court in Mar-a-Lago. That is where that's the president's winter White House, we now call it, his retreat in Florida. I just want to go through some of this because to the point that if you turn a Michael Flynn, this is not some advanced guy in the campaign. This is the National Security Advisor of the United States, one of the most sensitive jobs in government, a man who was Velcroed to the president, then candidate during much of the campaign. December 22nd, General Flynn now admits he asked the Russian ambassador to postpone a United Nations vote. The Obama administration is in power. The incoming administration is not supposed to touch the levers of government until after the hand comes off the Bible. December 29th, President Obama announces the sanctions. December 29th, Flynn asked the Russian ambassador, please don't have Vladimir Putin retaliate. President Trump's inaugurated. Flynn then lies to FBI investigators just days after taking his job. The then acting Attorney General Sally Yates comes running to the White House and says, you guys have a problem here. Then President Trump fires Yates, not Flynn, and Flynn only resigns after the Washington Post and other media outlets then report that Sally Yates is saying you got a blackmail problem in the White House.
Yeah. Keep this in mind. What we heard inside that courtroom belies any administration argument that Michael Flynn was freelancing here. At a minimum, he kept Mar-a-Lago apprised of what he was discussing in these conversations. Beyond that, he said that senior Trump transition officials told him to carry out those conversations. We don't know yet if those senior officials included the president, but the White House cannot argue that this was Michael Flynn going off as a loose cannon here, at least based on what he's telling them. Two, the White House and the president's argument from the beginning on this has been, one, that this is a witch hunt, and two, that it's, coffee boy, et cetera, low-level people. That is belied, again, by the facts of these last couple of weeks. This is his national security advisor, his campaign chairman already, as we know, indicted, his deputy campaign chairman, one. Two, this is a federal crime, lying. This is no small deal. Three, it is lying, as you said, John, about material issues, about sanctions against Russia for interfering in the U.S. election, conversations with the Russian ambassador, about a UN resolution regarding Israel, material issues. It's not just about golf games, right? So what we're heard in that courtroom today, what we see in these documents, belie every administration argument so far about this investigation.
And it shows an expanding investigation. The president keeps saying, wrap this up as quickly as possible. We'll get into his mindset later in the hour. But now it's about, were you trying to pull the levers of the United States government before you assumed control of the United States government? We also know they're investigating was the firing of the FBI Director James Comey before Bob Mueller got here, an effort to obstruct an investigation. When the president asked James Comey to go easy on Michael Flynn, was he being nice to his friend and saying, please, the guy's shamed, just let him go? Or does he know what Flynn knows, and which gets you to senior transition officials at Mar-a-Lago? Take me through, Michael. How does this work now? He's cooperating. Just take us, what is the process? And if the national security advisor to the president of the United States, if you cut a deal with him that goes easy on him, you don't cut a deal with somebody that high up the chain and go easy on them, tell me if I'm wrong, unless you think you can go higher.
That's right. So the timeline of these sort of things is you're told you're a target. You get a lawyer. The lawyer calls the prosecutor and says, can we work out a deal? And the lawyer says, what do you got to offer? The lawyer makes a proffer, a presentation of what the testimony would be. The prosecutors think about it. They generally bring the individual in. They assess his credibility and then make a decision. In this case, it clearly is that they assessed that Flynn has a story to tell, as he said he did, that it's credible, and that a jury, if you will, would believe it. So I believe that they have that evidence, not necessarily in the grand jury yet, but possibly, about what Flynn would say. And I think what Flynn has to be talking about is these senior White House officials, Manafort, Kushner, Corey Lewandowski, who has a name I can never pronounce, and that those guys, I think, is believed, communicated with the president, and that we'll see the one point is, did the president direct this, or was this directed at one level below, beneath the president, Don Jr., et cetera? But I don't think that the prosecutor believes that they didn't report back to the president. And so any allegation by the president that I didn't know what was going on here, if he says it under oath, I think he's going to find himself in the same position that Flynn is, which is a liar.
One argument that I heard from a White House official this morning was, and it's in line with this Ty Cobb statement, but it goes a little further, which is, well, this person was speaking on background, but Flynn is a proven liar. We know Flynn is a liar, so therefore he's just going to lie. And I think you are going to hear more of that in the coming days. But I don't think you are going to hear from the president for as long as they can keep his hands tied behind his back and his Twitter feed away from him.
That's an interesting point, but they can question Michael Flynn's truth-telling, if you will, but they can't question his proximity and access to the president, which they've tried to do with other people. Again, we'll discuss all this. We go through the hour more in our breaking news just ahead. Got to work in a quick break. Before we go, our own Monteraju tried to get comment from the Republican chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee about this. He was not successful, but not for lack of effort.